All right. Well, welcome back to Bad Points. This is the show that no one really cares about, but surely if we keep doing it, someone will. We actually do have like 15 monthly listeners, which is cool. I don't promote it really, but either way, I'm very happy because typically the people I do get on the show are people I've known for a while, but I do this thing where I try to kind of fish, just put a social media post out there who wants to be on the show to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I had absolutely zero clue that I would be talking to a Korean American from Colorado about the Rooftop Koreans, but I've been given permission to call you Ty, but let everyone know what your full name is.
So my full name is Lee Taeyun, but you can just call me Ty. That works as well.
There we go. We appreciate that. Well, Ty, so you have is it a comic book series or what of the Return of the Rooftop Koreans? Tell me about that real quick.
So I have a graphic novel called Return of the Rooftop Koreans, and so for those of you who aren't familiar with graphic novels, it's like a larger comic book, and essentially it's a graphic novel that tells the story about like a new generation of rooftop Koreans in the present day and them fighting to protect their community from gangs and looters and criminals. And this book was on Kickstarter for a while, and that's ended, and hopefully the book will be releasing sometime in December 2025.
So it's kind of like a perpetuation of the situation. Like, oh man, we need to get back on the rooftop. We still got trouble. Is that kind of the gist of the situation at a real high level?
Yeah, so it's kind of like I was always wondering like what would it be like if the rooftop Koreans were to come back today, and the idea kind of like came from the the George Floyd, Summer of Love, BLM riots, and I kept thinking to myself, maybe now is a good time for the rooftop Koreans to make a comeback, and that's kind of where the idea for the graphic novel came back from. Like, it's about what would it be like if the rooftop Koreans were here today.
Well, they got plenty of reason to get back on the rooftops because I don't know if you've noticed, but America is overrun by Marxist revolutionaries.
Yeah.
And what's funny is, well, it's not funny, but the thing is, people always told, which just a quick background. I've been in, my family's been in America for a long time. I'm a direct descendant of the last president of Texas before they joined the United States. His name was Anson Jones. So been in Texas for a long time. I'm a proud Texan. I'm not currently proud of what's happening in Texas, but I'm a proud Texan. I do want to reclaim my state's identity. But, people have always told me, America's so young. It's such a young country. They have not experienced everything, and I didn't even know what that meant. I just thought, I was naive as most Americans have been for a long time. I thought that that's not going to happen to us. We got it going on. We wield the biggest sword. We have a great economy. Everything's great. But apparently, for a really long time, but particularly around the 50s or 60s, the communists really started infiltrating. Education was probably the biggest one because if you can control the kids, they will become politicians and doctors and lawyers. And now we're seeing the manifestation of not caring enough about the generation that's about to come up after you. So we are definitely dealing with that, and the rooftop Koreans are more than welcome to get on the rooftop and defend themselves, especially since we don't particularly trust our government anymore. And I also saw that your email, I won't give your email out, but it gave me an idea that you are not a leftist. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I'm definitely not a leftist. I would consider myself to be more of a very conservative leaning libertarian, and obviously my email, well, I guess I can mention this, is antiwokebooks@gmail.com, and I actually own and run a publishing company with my brother-in-law called Anti Woke Books, and our goal is to publish books that have a conservative or libertarian or anti-woke message. We want to be like, an alternate to all the like woke books that are out there in like libraries and bookstores, and we just want to like give people an alternative. And that's kind of why I started Anti-Woke Books with my brother-in-law.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you did that. That's important too because on one hand, a lot of publishers and basically people in power are captured either by leftist money or Israel money or something that we don't want, something that does not serve us, not of the people, by the people, for the people, right? So that my cat's meowing. I apologize about that. But also, I've thought lately. I've done more thinking since 2020 than I ever have. I've broken away from the bread and circus by a large margin compared to most people I know. But you know, with AI going the direction it's going, it would be nothing for a leftist, socialist, communist, whatever the case may be, to take over all the major AI platforms and start twisting information and giving alternative histories. But if you have a book in your house, they can't touch that book. You'll always have that book. So I kind of have a theory that books are going to be uh, a valuable resource moving into the future. So that's a good move on your part. So I told you in the 122nd pre-show meeting, if we even went that long, that I know very little about the rooftop Koreans. I just like most people who are anti-government corruption and things like that, people on the right, we like the spirit of the rooftop Koreans. So give me you can delve kind of deep, but definitely hit the high level as well. Kind of the origins of those Koreans specifically, like when did they get there? Why were they so brazen in defending themselves? Because a lot of people come over from another country and they're like, I'm not going to hold a gun. I don't want to get in trouble for having a gun, much less being on the rooftop pointing it at people. So give me a little background story about those particular people and then go into the rooftop Korean situation.
Yeah, I can do that. So to give a bit more background, regarding, the rooftop Koreans, most rooftop Koreans were, first generation immigrants. They came from South Korea to the US, and most of the people that immigrated from the South Korea to the US came here, I would say sometime during 1948 to 1960. That's when, South Korea actually was a dictatorship. They were not actually a democracy, and they were ruled by a guy named Lee Seung-myeon. Let's just say he was just a really evil guy who, you know, killed a lot of people, and yeah,
Typical
made,
dictator.
yeah, he was basically a dictator, and you know, he also had a Jewish wife, which is kind of weird. The one Korean guy who happens to be married to a Jew becomes, the
Kind of
president. Really weird.
kind
And
of suspicious.
yeah. And during that time, like many Korean Americans, they began fleeing from South Korea, and many of them came to the US. And there were people like, my mother and my father, they wanted to like get away from the Lee Seung-myeon regime. And that's kind of why they immigrated to the US. And, many, people probably don't know this, but in South Korea, all males are required to serve in the military. Because of that, a lot of the rooftop Koreans are former military veterans, and they have experience using guns, and they know how to use guns. And that's like a key part of who the rooftop Koreans were, because they served in the Korean military. And also many Koreans, immigrated from South Korea to the US during the 70s. And I would say like the majority who moved here were mostly, like blue collar, working class. Like many of them did not speak very good English. So when they came here, it was kind of difficult to find jobs. So many of them began, pooling their own resources to start their own businesses, which is why so many Korean Americans were shop owners. Like, especially in LA, a lot of like liquor stores and dry cleaners are run by Korean Americans. And that's kind of what, led to the rooftop Korean situation. For those of you who are listening, who may or may not be familiar with the LA riots, during the LA riots, started in, April 29th, 1992. They essentially started because there was a guy named Rodney King, who was a career criminal, not a good guy,
Typically
but
how it works.
yeah, yeah. And, he was obviously on something like lots of drugs or something, but the police were having like a hard time subduing him and arresting him. So they ended up, using a lot of force just to, subdue him. And apparently that was actually caught on camera and was later aired by the news, which created a lot of anger, and people accused the LAPD of racism. And eventually the four cops that were involved in this incident, they were acquitted of all charges. So none of them were sent to jail or prison for the beating of Rodney King.
Which
And this,
surely increased the temperature significantly more.
yeah,
That was a big problem for the Marxist mob.
yeah, and that's kind of what led to the LA riots. Like in the beginning, they were peaceful. These, of course, a lot of peaceful protests. They start off peaceful, but then they eventually escalate into riots, and that's when there was looting, arson, people getting beaten up. Like there was a what's his name, Reginald Denny, who was a truck driver who was beaten up and killed by these rioters. And, because there were riots all over LA, the LAPD, they were overwhelmed. Like they, just could not protect all of LA. So they only focused on protecting like the upper, richer neighborhoods like Beverly Hills and Fairfax. And the rest of LA was pretty much left to fend for themselves. Like there was no police protection, and because of that, many Korean American business owners they decided to take up arms and station themselves on the rooftops of their stores in order to deter looting and rioting. And these people they became known as the rooftop Koreans. And I'm sure for those of you listening, you've all seen like the memes and the images of the rooftop Koreans, and I'm sure you're all familiar with them now. But that's kind of how it all started with a bunch of Korean business owners, taking up arms to protect their stores and their livelihoods. I also do want to point out that oftentimes, like I know a lot of people are going to say like, but didn't they have insurance? Well, yeah, they did have insurance, but they had like liability insurance, which kind of like protects them from being sued, but not like insurance when it comes to like their property being damaged or looted. So therefore, it was important to, of course, protect.
That would have bankrupted them. They'd have had no assets to sell. They'd have had a building to repair that they couldn't afford. So they had no choice really. They needed to defend their property or lose their livelihood.
Yeah. And also, of course, insurance companies are notorious for, ripping people off and screwing people over. So you can
Can't
never
trust them.
count on them. So yeah, so that's.
Yeah, that's a really good high level overview there. Did they end up firing any shots?
So yeah, so there were multiple shots that were fired. The vast majority of shots fired were like warning shots,
Right.
but
Because they didn't want to kill. They didn't want a court battle. They did not even. They didn't even want to be on the rooftop in the first place. So I'm sure they didn't want to kill anyone and have the repercussions of that. But they did do the warning shots. You say?
yeah, there were warning shots, and there was like a one rooftop Korean who was accidentally killed by friendly fire. But unfortunately, yeah, that was bad. But no riders or no thugs were actually like shot or killed. Like pretty much just standing on the roof with a rifle will pretty much deter the vast majority of looters from going anywhere near those stores. Like they kind of just knew, stay away. I don't want to risk getting shot. Just standing on your roof with a gun deters a lot of riders.
Yeah, that's what I always tell my wife. She's worried from time to time. She'll worry about the security of the home. I understand you should, but I tell her, we're in a neighborhood. First of all, it's a safer neighborhood, but the main point is we have a lot of elderly people in our neighborhood, and I'm a 6'4" bodybuilder who goes outside with guns on occasion, and we have several dogs. We're not the mark, criminals, they're not trying to have fun, they're trying to get free shit. Like they're going to go for the easiest mark, and if there are Koreans on a rooftop with weapons and occasionally firing them, that's going to be a great deterrence. So that's really what they were that's I'm sure that was their primary objective, just deter. They weren't trying to start a war or, like I said, go to court or anything like that. Another question I had, I don't know if you have the answer to this, but do you remember how the media portrayed this situation? Were they trying to vilify the rooftop Koreans? Were they celebrating them? Or how did they kind of paint that situation?
I'd say the way the media covered the situation was mostly twofold. Like, of course, there were some people that portrayed the rooftop Koreans as very, neutral, like just kind of just stating the facts because obviously, back then the media wasn't as biased as it is today. Like even CNN wasn't as, propagandized or radicalized as it is today. So many like local news stations, they did like accurately report the situation, pointing out that many Korean American business owners were standing on their rooftops just trying to deter looters. However, there were like some people that villainized them. Like I know like what's his name, Ice Cube, the celebrity. I don't know if you're familiar
Yeah,
with him. Yeah, the
very
rapper.
famous rapper. Yeah.
Yeah, he like villainized the Koreans. Like before the
Really?
riots. Yeah, yeah, like before the riots, he wrote like a song called Black Korea, which is like a song about robbing Korean stores. And he basically called the most Korean Americans racist and that they hated black people. And there was also like another incident shortly before the LA riots. There was a girl named Latasha Harding who I think she was like 17, but she was essentially shoplifting from a Korean owned store. And the owner of the store, which was a Korean woman, tried to stop her from leaving. So she ended up attacking her. And then the Korean woman ended up shooting Latasha Harding. And Latasha Harding ended up unfortunately dying. And, that incident, like, really, like, was politicized and was, like, portrayed as, like, all Koreans are racist and evil, and especially that's kind of where like inspired like Ice Cube talk about how racist and evil Korean Americans were. So that's kind of how that came to be.
Only leftists will call you racist if someone, like if you're white and a black man breaks into your house at night and you shoot them. Only a leftist would call you racist for that. It's like their brain is scrambled. They don't think clearly. Like, no, that's called self-defense. It's not like if a white person broke into my house, I would let it slide. You see what I'm saying? Yeah, leftists really don't make sense a lot of the time. It's basically just due to the extreme propaganda, the victim mindset. The number one thing is we protect this group and vilify this group. Those people are insane. I just didn't know. Honestly, I didn't know that the media wasn't as propagandized back then, or maybe they just had different priorities. How did this, if it did at all, how did it affect Korean Americans, either their mindsets or the way people viewed them around that time?
So definitely changed how Korean Americans view the world. Like one, I do want to point out that shortly after the LA riots, a lot of Korean Americans were really mad at the rapper Ice Cube because he was like kind of encouraged the riots and was like telling people to loot and rob Korean American businesses as payback for Latasha Harding. And to get even with Latasha Harding, I mean with Ice Cube. So I did mention earlier that many liquor stores were owned by Korean Americans. And because of that, they decided to boycott a liquor brand that Ice Cube was a spokesperson for.
Nice.
And yeah, yeah. So because they boycotted having this liquor brand in their stores, I don't remember the name of the brand, but because of that, Ice Cube did eventually end up being fired as a spokesperson. So that was kind of like Ice Cube being canceled early on.
The
And
first instances of effective cancel culture. I like it.
yeah, it was. So definitely the LA riots definitely like reshaped Korean American perception. There was like I also want to point out that like over 2,000 Korean American businesses were actually damaged and destroyed. The rooftop Koreans weren't able to protect everyone. Like some stores did end up being vandalized and some being set on fire. Unfortunately, that was just the way it was. And over I believe there was like a total of over 1 billion in property damages overall due to the LA riots. After this incident, a lot of like Korean Americans, they kind of realized that they need to like be more, involved in like politics or more like involved in like society. Like you couldn't just be like this isolated, segregated group. They needed to like integrate more with the overall American society. So that's like something that changed after the LA riots. As I mentioned earlier, the vast majority of the LAPD, they focus on protecting like Beverly Hills and Fairfax. And yeah, the main reason why Koreatown was kind of just abandoned was because they just didn't have a lot of influence. This like encouraged more Korean Americans to run for office and to get more involved in the government and, like have a bit more influence. Like, if this situation were to happen again, there wouldn't be so much damage and there wouldn't be like so many people being
Villainized.
injured, yeah, or, being killed. So, yeah, it definitely really changed Korean Americans overall and their perception and how they approach things in life.
Well, it put Korean Americans in the spotlight. And I don't know if they had been in the spotlight in that way before this occurrence, but I think what it probably did, and you can tell me if you agree or not, it probably prompted the Korean Americans like, hey, we can't just be Koreans who came to America and try to stay to ourselves. We need to integrate into America, into politics, become teachers. We can't just be the liquor store owners. We really got to, at least get the next generation involved in moving America in certain ways so that we can have a say in it, right? Does that make sense to you? Do you agree with that? Do you think that had an impact on that regard?
Yeah, definitely. And the thing is, like, the generation of Koreans that came afterwards, rather than being like small business owners, most of them were like white collar workers. So this, like, I think encouraged like Korean Americans to really like encourage their kids to go to college and to pursue like professional careers because, you'll like have a lot more influence that way rather than just being like a small business owner. So yeah, that definitely like
Get
gave
into the
like Korean.
institutions a little more.
Yeah, yeah, like it got like more Korean Americans to like, be more involved in society and not be so segregated, not like constantly keep to themselves, like to, spread out and not like just be like, you know, congregated in Koreatown.
Right. Yeah, and I completely understand being reclusive when you come from a different country under a dictatorial regime. You probably don't have many assets because they were all taken from you while you were there. And then you get to the new country, you kind of want to keep to yourself, build your own little neighborhood. That which all cultures do that. You can go all throughout Texas even, and there's one neighborhood. Why is everyone here African? The next neighborhood, why is everyone Korean? The next neighborhood, why is everyone Indian? Why is everyone Nepalese? Like that makes sense that they would want to do that. So that completely makes sense. But yeah, at some point, especially after you get the spotlight on you and you're being, slandered and smeared by celebrities, you definitely want to integrate at that point. And I wanted to ask you about, I have my theories and even anecdotal experience, but why do you think so much of the kind of the right leaning, especially the far right Americans, no matter what color, black, white, Asian, Latino, they look at the rooftop Koreans and they're just like, hell yeah. Like what makes you think we get that reaction when we see it?
I think it's like because when people look at like the rooftop Koreans, they see them like as like a symbol of defiance and like a symbol of like self-defense and taking matters into your own hands. Because rather than just like crying and being a victim, you got to sometimes, pick up a gun and you have to, man up. And that's kind of what they symbolize. And people like that. The rooftop Koreans weren't like just a bunch of victims and like just fled and ran away. That they stayed put and they stood their ground and they took a stand against the looters and the criminals. And the thing is, like the vast majority of Americans have like been a victim of a crime at some point. Like and we kind of always wish that we could have like done something about it. Like for instance, like I had someone break into my car. I have no idea who broke into my car, but the guy took my cell phone and he also like took some other stuff. But one thing he didn't take was like I had like $20 in the glow box in my car, but for some reason he never took that. But he took a bunch of other stuff, and that like really pissed me off. And I kind of wish, I was there when he was breaking into my car so I could, beat his ass. And I think like that's something that a lot of people wish, they wish they were there to, take on the looters and, bring them down.
Yeah, and honestly, I haven't really broken it down, but I'll kind of do it right now live. Really, it's a good glimpse at the American spirit. That's what they display, like the Christian American spirit, the original. America was originally a Christian country. They established these laws, these rules, these cultural norms. It's all going to hell right now, but that represents the good days when people would take matters into their own hands. And even specifically, if you want to get specific about it, guns. That's an American thing. There's so many, I don't know how many, last I checked, like 1 billion guns in America. You ain't getting rid of them. Anyone who thinks you are getting rid of them is crazy. And you had people that were getting they're getting their property destroyed, their livelihood destroyed, They couldn't rely on the cops. The cops didn't even want to, from what little I understand about the situation, the cops didn't even want to be in that area. Like you said, they were protecting the rich areas. They weren't going to go protect some liquor stores owned by Korean Americans. They ain't worried about that. Let it burn. But the Koreans, they said, hey, let's defend our property with our guns. We're not going to go out and try to loot anyone. We're not going to go try to hurt anybody. We're not bad people. But and I don't know if this was their mindset at the time, but this is what people look at. This is how people perceive it. Like, I'm an American, I'm a sovereign citizen. I have the right to defend my property. This is my property. I own it. I pay for it. That's a big thing in America. That's one reason why people love America, why people want to come to America. Like, wait, I can own property and tell the cops to get lost if they come knocking on my door and want to come in. I can tell them get the hell off my property. That's an awesome thing. That's an amazing thing. That should be more prominent. Hopefully someday more countries are like that. I don't see that happening. Not even sure if it'll keep happening here, but we're gonna damn sure try. But it's a really inspirational. Just when you see that picture, those scrawny ass Koreans and the wife beaters smoking the cigarette with a damn AK. It's like, man, that gets you fired up just looking at it. Um, I do want to ask uh, a question not related to the situation. I think you detailed the situation really well. I'm going to clip out some of this and post the clips. That's what people really like. But I do want to know a little bit about your book, a little bit more about your book. First of all, this is probably more akin to a closing question, but I'm curious myself. How would one go about buying the book? Is it physical, digital, both, and where do you go to get it?
So for my book, right now the only place you can get it is on Indiegogo, and you can get a digital version or a physical version. So if you go to Indiegogo.com and search for Return of the Rooftop Koreans, you'll see my Indiegogo campaign there, and you can get a digital version for $20, or you could get a physical version for $25. And the book has 148 pages, and it's got,
Man,
yeah, it's in full color. It's got a lot of great action. It's got a great story, and people who love like vigilante type stories, like if you love like Death Wish, Dirty Harry, or even like Taxi Driver, you will really love Return of the Rooftop Koreans.
how do you spell it in this regard? How do you spell Indie? INDIIEY. How do you spell India for Indiegogo?
Yeah, so it's INDIEGOGO, so Indiegogo.
Indiegogo.com. Okay. And a graphic novel, I've heard of them. I told you I broke away from a lot of Bread and Circus, but I do like, I like to write Bread and Circus. But I've seen some animes. I know that Berserk, and wasn't that a graphic novel originally?
Yeah, Berserk, are you talking about Berserk from
Yes.
Japan?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a graphic novel.
Okay, so I didn't read the graphic novel. I have a few friends that said they were great. Is a graphic novel the same thing as manga, or is that completely different? I'm sure the concepts are the same, but what's the difference in manga and a graphic novel?
I think for like manga, people, typically associate that with Japan, and manga is also like black and white, like the inside pages are all black and white, and it's also kind of like, smaller in size. Whereas with a graphic novel, people think graphic novel, they think like Western, like something from America or Canada or Europe. And graphic novels are generally in color rather than in black and white. Um, they're also like larger, like the size is a bit bigger than like a manga. Yeah, I think like manga is more Japan, graphic novel is more like the West.
So graphic novel, it's I'm not it might sound reductive. It's not meant that way, but it's like a book with pictures. I mean, it's essentially that, right? Like a comic book, but is it more like a book with pictures or more like a comic book, or is that the same damn thing?
Yeah, I know it's a bit confusing. I would say it's kind of the same thing, like the inside page are the same. So how I would define a comic book and a graphic novel is that, and I'm sure like there are people out there that would disagree, but my definition is that a comic book is much smaller and it has like a staple bindings rather than like having a square bound binding that graphic novels have. Graphic novels are usually like a lot larger So comic books are roughly around, I would say, like um anywhere from like 20 to 40 pages at most, and then a graphic novel is going to be like at least like 64 pages. Like they can be anywhere from like 64 pages to like a couple hundred pages. And graphic novels also like have like thicker paper compared to comic books that have like thin paper. And also graphic novels don't have like ads in them. Like comic books, they generally like have a few ads for like energy drinks or video games and stuff like that. But graphic novels are pretty much ad free. And also, oftentimes, like if there's like a bunch of issues of a comic book, they'll take like 6 issues of like Spider-Man and then they'll like turn that into like a graphic novel and then like resell that. So that's also common as well.
Yeah, so comics will spin off into graphic novels. Another question I had, how many do you just have one Return of the Rooftop Koreans? If so, do you plan on making part two, or where do you plan to go with this?
So there's just one graphic novel, and you get the whole story from beginning to end in that one graphic novel. It's an entirely self-contained story. As for whether or not I want to make a sequel, I don't know. I have some ideas for a sequel, but there's also like a part of me that wants to move on and try something different and maybe just like try a different genre, like maybe going into fantasy. So we'll see where that goes. But as of right now, I don't have any plans to create a sequel for Return of the Rooftop Koreans.
Do you want to? Are you driven to? Did you enjoy making this one? Would you want to keep making more of them, assuming you could have some sort of success with it?
Yeah, I would say I definitely really enjoyed making it. And, maybe I want to say maybe make a sequel, but maybe like a prequel. Like there's like a part of me that wants to like make a prequel called Rooftop Koreans that takes place in 1992. That's like a very historical account of the Rooftop Koreans, but the book I made, it's not like a historical account of what happened in the 1992
Completely
LA
fiction.
riots. Yeah, it's like completely fiction, and I just wanted to like tell like what would it be like if the rooftop Koreans existed today and how they would deal with like BLM and Antifa, and like the main villains in the book are strongly inspired by BLM and Antifa. So maybe I might do a prequel sometime in the future, but as of now I'm leaning more towards like just moving on and trying like different genres.
Fiction out.
Yeah.
Well, man, I think that's awesome. We'll wrap it up, but I'm glad you're out there doing this. I think we need as much anti-wokeness as humanly possible. And I've always been interested in the Rooftop Koreans. I just not interested enough to look into it deeply, but I think you hit up whatever I needed to be head up on. So I appreciate you, and I want everyone listening to this to go to indiegogo.com and get the Return of the Rooftop Koreans. I'm probably going to get a physical copy because I told you I think that's going to be valuable in the future. These physical books that people cannot change and edit through technology. But I appreciate you, man. I'm going to keep following you on X, and if I got any more things to ask you and talk to you about, I'd love to do it if you're willing.
All right, Seth, thanks for having me on Bad Points. I really enjoyed talking about the Rooftop Koreans. And for those of you who are listening, I hope you enjoyed learning about the Rooftop Koreans. And, of course, be sure to check out my new graphic novel on Indiegogo. Seth, once again, thanks for inviting me as a guest, and take care.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you coming on. You be good, man. Later.